Blog Talk Radio.
Check one, check two, check
Fans, here we go with the main event of the evening. Ladies and gentlemen in attendance, boxing fans joining us around the world. It's time for the bout you've all been waiting for. Finally, it's showtime.
Here, man, we dedicate our life to this sport. We do thousands of sit-ups in camp. We run hundreds of miles, for the ones that take it serious. And we just dedicate ourselves fully to our craft, man. We watch tape. We have attitude. We rooting, and we go into that fight to land on the line.
Minnesota Vikings fans, the Purple People Eaters podcast returns. I'm your host, Chris Carlson. My co-host, Aaron, will be joining me shortly. Well, here we are. Here we are. A place that Vikings fans know all too well, don't we? Like I said, we are back here on the Purple People Eaters podcast. We're not going to talk a ton about that bullying by the Bears. We're not gonna sit here and spend an hour talking about that Bears game. Now we're gonna have to cover it. We are gonna have to cover it, but we're gonna do our damnedest not to spend too much time on that damn Bears game. Okay? So those listening to the show, don't be too alarmed on that one. Okay? So like I said, here we are. The season is over. No first round playoff, one and done, no nothing. It's over. And, when you look at how the season turned out, we pretty much deserve to be in this situation, I'd say. And especially the offensive side of the ball, clearly. The defense, sure, those first 4 or 5 games, you can rip them plenty. And we did. But you can't deny the fact that our defense, kept us in most of those games down the stretch, second half of the season. But anyway, we will start by recapping that debacle home loss, knocking the Vikes out of the playoff picture altogether with a Philly, win, obviously. And so we'll discuss some of that Bears stuff. There's not a lot to get into, really. Because we've seen it all before. It's kind of like a broken record. But we'll also discuss a couple of things that's going on out there in Vikings Nation. The fan base or the media or a combination of those things. A lot of people, are saying, let's fire Zimmer. Let's fire Zimmer. Let's fire Spielman. We do know officially, as of right now, that they are both going to be retained. They both have a year on their deal left as well. Now, you never know what happens, I suppose. Spielman could get offered a job and leave potentially with 8 vacancies, in the NFL. I guess technically Zimmer could leave too. But as far as we know, the powers that be, and that be Ziggy, he has said he's retaining. They're not going to fire either one of them for this year. And Zimmer also let it be known to the press, very Zimmer-like. He probably did it out of one eye. He was probably texting, trying to type into that, closing that one eye. I can't quite see it. It's just better when I close the eye. Texting saying, "Hey, I'm not retiring. I'm not resigning. Okay, I'm here. I'm here for the long haul." Now, we'll see if that is the case in the long run, of course. But, yeah, so we're definitely going to talk a little bit about that. We'll also, we'll kind of give us a season recap, an overview of the season in a nutshell. We're not going to spend a bunch of time week by week talking about the good times and the bad times. I think we did a pretty good job of that on a weekly basis. And then we'll get into discussing a little bit of free agency stuff. Obviously, we kind of a lot of us know where our needs need to be, so to speak. And so yeah, well, of course, we got to talk Cousins. It wouldn't be a show if we don't talk Cousins, right? So yeah, we're just gonna kind of, make our way through this. On a positive note, we will be closing the show with a Minnesota Gopher football segment from that impressive win over Georgia Tech. What a way to end the season, man. What a way for PJ Fleck and company to end the season. Really, really happy over there, no doubt about it. In fact, the Gophers kind of made it an interesting move that didn't make much, headways locally. A lot of people talking about the Vikings, of course. Didn't make probably even the bottom line on ESPN, maybe. But the Gophers did add someone to their staff. So that'll be interesting, too. It was a head coach from Maine, actually, to help out, which I think is a good look, especially with the new defensive coordinator who's, a little inexperienced, but we love what we've seen so far. But yeah, we're not going to go heavy free agent. A lot of people are just kind of, we're just happy if you listen to the podcast at this point. A lot of people are just kind of shutting it down. Some people, especially the casual ball fans, won't even watch the rest of the playoffs. But we'll definitely bring up some free agency stuff. But just so you know, we've been doing this thing on the weekly basis since September, early September. We will not be doing a weekly show all 2019 type thing, not on a weekly basis. However, come late February, right when that free agency period comes, we'll be doing a pre-free agency, breaking down all the needs and who's going to get cut, who's not, maybe a different player like an offensive lineman getting cut from a different team. You never really know. So there's a lot of information that still needs to come out. We know our free agents, we know our restricted free agents, but there's a lot of moving parts when it comes to this. So we're not going to take a deep dive into free agency. We figure let's let it simmer, and talk Zimmer. Okay. So, it is what it is. We will, but just so you know, we will be doing pre-free agency and post-free agency shows. Then, a couple months later, not even, maybe a month and a half, we'll be back with a pre-draft and a post-draft. And, we did start it a week before the season started in September. Be different. We're going to actually start this puppy in August and start training camp this thing. So we'll be going at it full time pretty much once August kicks around. But let's focus on this show, shall we? And by the way, if this is your first time listening to the Purple People Leaders podcast, it streams right here live on blogtalkradio.com/Rope-It-Over Radio. The number to call is 646-381-4990. That way you can take the show with you. Maybe you're dropping off the kids, at their friend's house for New Year's. Maybe you're going to go do some shopping randomly. I'm sure everyone's sick of shopping. Maybe you're just going to go get a nice workout. Maybe New Year's is just full of amateurs, so you don't even want to mess with it. Either way, take the show with you, 646-381-4990. You can listen live on your phone or on the browser, on your phone or computer or whatever. But like I said, it archives on blogtalkradio.com/Rope-It-Over Radio. Streams live, archives. It can also be found under the Rope-It-Over Radio podcast on iTunes, Player FM, Stitcher, Spreaker. TuneIn is another great outlet. We're also part of the Grueling Truth Sports Podcast Network. And that could be subscribed everywhere I mentioned and more. And also the Grueling Truth Sports Podcast Network streams live on iHeartRadio and Spotify. You can stream it right on Spotify as well. So we got you covered. Head on over to thegruelingtruth.net. That's thegruelingtruth.net. They got a great sponsor over there, mybookie.ag. That's mybookie.ag. Head on over to thegruelingtruth.net. Listen listen to a podcast, you can listen to the podcast actually right there. Read an article. There's all sorts. It's football, it's basketball, it's baseball, it's boxing, it's thing in between. And like I said, while you're at it, it'll link you right to mybookie.ag. Go ahead and place a bet. Why not? I mean, if you're into that type of thing. And, yesterday wouldn't have been a safe bet. It wouldn't have been a safe bet to bet on our Minnesota Vikings, unfortunately. But, you got to take it on the chin sometimes. I'm going to go ahead and bring in my co-host, Aaron. How you doing, Aaron? Happy New Year's. I mean, it's not quite there, but, it's New Year's somewhere, the old line.
Yeah, Happy New Year to you too, man. I'm doing good. Just kind of getting over the game yesterday. A lot of stuff to talk about as far as that's concerned. But, I guess just moving on in Viking land.
Yeah, man, and it's something that we get used to year in and year out, no matter if it's mid-January, late January, late December in this case. But, yeah, at the beginning of the season, you definitely couldn't have told me that we were going to miss the playoffs. Even at 9-7, 10-6, I thought we would be able to sneak in. And it comes down to, it really comes down to that damn Buffalo game, doesn't it? I mean, it comes down to a lot more. But I'm saying as far as just the entrance, just entering the playoffs, that thing was just sitting there. And obviously the tie with the Packers was sitting there too. It helped us a little bit to stay a half game ahead. It also hurt us to stay a half game behind. But, it is what it is. It is what it is, and there's not a damn thing that we can do about it. But, hey, at least we got a place to vent, and maybe us venting can help you vent too. Go ahead and scream. Go ahead and agree or disagree with us, whatever you want to do. But, yeah, it's over. And when you look at that game yesterday, I mean, if you look at the game before, I mean, even that damn Dolphins game, how we started out, just horrendous as far as, the offense is concerned when you're just looking at it with these 3 and outs. And the 3 and outs has been a theme throughout the year, no doubt about it. Obviously it got exploited when we play either a really solid team, like a very good to excellent team this year, or just a great defense would do it too. But yeah, to start out, I mean, as we kind of break some of this down, Aaron, it was kind of, it didn't shock me that we came out with 3 pass plays because, I'm sure they're like, hey, if you look at the last, couple of games, they've been running the ball excessively, and they were really good against the run. So I didn't think we would be able to go out there and, push the rock 38, 42 times or nothing like that. It didn't shock me because they're trying to mix it up early. I get that. But it was kind of ironic how much we talked about this run and to come out with 3 pass plays and boom, what do you know? And then on the flip side, we have talked about some chunk plays, and even in the running game that the defense does give up. And Harris, the safety who's been playing pretty damn good this season, didn't have a good moment early in that game. Instead of filling that gap, he missed it. He was that split second late, and that's part of all 11 being on the same page. And everybody has a job to do. That was a perfect example. That 42-yard run right up the gut, couldn't quite get to fill that hole or even make him move or anything. It was just like, yeah, go ahead. And, next thing you know, I think it was another pass play. And there was, actually, it was just one. It was just, yeah, I can't remember. Oh, no, yeah, that's right. It was mostly running. They only had that one pass play. It was mostly running. Next thing you know, it's 7-0. Vikes come out, run the ball twice, and then get sacked on the 3rd and 3. And next thing you know, it's 3 and outs. And, hey, why not while we're at it, Aaron? Let's make it 4 3 and outs to start. And here we are. Alexander missed that tackle on Gabriel for a big play. Here we are at like 124-2. We're getting outgained. And then after another drive, Weatherly barely touched the QB on that hit. And next thing you know, there was actually Holton Hill got beat on that pass. He was there, though, in coverage, just couldn't quite close the play and get his hand in there. He was obviously pretty much there. Now we're sitting at being outgained 195-2. And, 13-0 could have been way worse, actually, at that time. But 13-0, and you're just thinking, what in the world? Here we go. You're looking at a 6.7 to 0.2 average per play separation there. And that's to you. What the hell was going through your head when you say not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 and out, or 3 and outs? I would have loved a 4 and out, for Christ's sake, but 3 and outs just like that. And you're like, well, this isn't going to go good. This could get real ugly.
Yeah, I kind of called it last week. I kind of saw that this was coming. And, it's a combination of a few things. First thing being, we just couldn't block them. We couldn't block them the first game, and we couldn't block them this game. And if we played them 3 more times, I don't think we could block them. Our offensive line was just not up to snuff, and their defensive line is dominant. So that was going to be a problem, sort of what I read into going into the game. Now to go 4-3 and outs for a total of 4 yards. It's 4 yards, Chris, on 4 offensive possessions. I think it was like, that's, what are we talking, a quarter of a yard? That's a quarter of a yard. So for each possession. So I knew then that things weren't going to go very well, but I thought maybe we could try something, kick it in, and then, of course, they go down and get a 42-yard run from Howard and punch in the first touchdown. I said, oh, boy, this doesn't look good. But still had a lot of hope at that point. I think you wanted to keep it pretty short here in recapping the game. So basically, the points are pretty self-explanatory and obvious. You don't really have to be a genius to figure it out. You just couldn't block them. And if you can't block them, you got no offense because you can't throw the ball, and obviously you can't run the ball. And then, defensively, it was a bad performance. It wasn't the worst performance in the world, something we could have lived with if we had any offense at all. But,
right.
Just giving up third down conversions after third down conversions, just couldn't stop them on third down. As in that third quarter where they did that 16-play drive, I think they picked up 5 first downs on the way into the end zone. That's just not something that we do as far as our defense goes, and just didn't work. We didn't get any kind of pass rush, and I don't think they did anything special. I just think that we just didn't bring it in the pass rush, and we're pretty soft up the middle on the run, and these are just uncharacteristic things you don't see from the Vikings defense that often. And, it's hard. I keep saying you don't see it that often, but how many times can I say that through the year? I think every significant game where we played a winning team, we had the same problem. So, you could put on your rose-colored glasses and say, well, bad year or bad game, or maybe everybody's new or something like that. But now with this defense, they've been together for years, and it's just kind of concerning when it comes down to that. So, we got our problems with Cousins and concerns. I'm sure we'll get into that. But, I hated to watch it. I kind of knew what I was going to see, and it kind of came true. So you got some things to worry about here in the off season. Hopefully we can get them remedied.
Yeah, and just to kind of talk second half, we did get that little drive finally, some sort of drive. Well, we picked up a first down. That was the first thing we had to do. Got 6 plays, 15 yards. That was a nice little drive we had, 3 minutes, 42 seconds. We didn't score there, but the 3 and out on the other side, and we did get a field goal. And we're like, okay, we got a field goal. Funny, it came in the last 2 minutes when we don't huddle. We've been talking about that for about a month now, haven't we? The no huddle and whatnot, and maybe we should go to that more this year. But in the end, I don't think that would have been the saving grace, no doubt about it. But we came out. They had a decent little drive going. Defense stuffed it. And you're right. The defense, it was a bend defense this time, but it didn't break. it actually did not break enough to where, like you said, we could have taken it, even if we would have just had some life form there early on. And we talked about that last week. The first quarter and a half, we cannot just do what we've been doing with those 3 and outs. We got to put just something, 8-play field goal, whatever, something. But when we went down there, 12 play, 92 yards, 7:35 on the clock, I'm thinking, here we go, dude. Okay. It is what it is. We also thought, maybe these Bears are going to start to rest them, the Bear players. And, whatever. It is what it is. I mean, winning and then losing next week does suck. But it's the next week. And you never know what the hell happens with turnovers, with the punt return, with the punt block. You just never know. Especially with our defense, we can create turnovers and whatnot. But much like the Patriots game, much like the Rams game, much like all the quality, teams we faced, what 13-10? Okay, now we're really gonna, and like you said, that 16-play drive, it's like right back at it. We just had a beautiful drive, and they go 16 plays, like you mentioned. 9 minutes. Oh, they're up 11. And then we turnover on downs. That's another thing that we've been doing a lot is turnover on downs, and that was our next 3. Well, once you get in that situation, that's obviously going to be what it turns into, but maybe not that next one. You know what I mean? Not the one after. Now the last one I understand because they're just like, screw it. Or the last 2 even, I'd say. But you're right. Good point on third down. They were 8 of 14. The Vikes were 1 of 11. Didn't turn the ball over at all, but man, 37-22. This is like Nebraska Cornhuskers 80s going against the Gophers when they came in here with Rozier and just shellacked us. 11 penalties though on the Bears. Like when you look at some of these stats, you go, this was a winnable game, damn it. And here we are, rushing yards too. 169, like you said, they actually ran the ball more than they passed it. And, once again, another quarterback didn't kill us by any stretch of the imagination, and he just played good enough. They just played good enough. Cohen definitely had a 100-yard game, so he played, obviously really well, as well. But, yeah, man, just an ugly one. Just an ugly one. Any other notes from that debacle of a game before we move on to kind of give a season overview and kind of mix the 3 topics, really? Well, I guess 4. But as far as what the fan base is talking about and the media is talking about, that's, of course, Cousins, Zimmer, and Spielman. Anything else you want to talk about, or should we just burn this one and forget about it and just, get excited for late July in camp coming around? Obviously, free agency is going to be, the draft and free agencies in years like this is so much funner, and you pay so much more attention to it because, you can actually do stuff. And we do have the 18th pick, by the way, if people don't know out there. But anything else from that Bears, the bowling Bears, I'm going to start to call them? Because you're right, man. That defensive line, along with Khalil Mack, they tend to have corners. They just tend to have pretty quality corners. But that D-line, man, that was nasty. But, yeah, anything else there with the Bears game?
No, Khalil Mack kind of sets off that defensive line. Without him, I don't think they're strong. I mean, obviously not as strong, but I think he really sets it up to where a lot of those guys can start to work because you have to pay so much attention to Mack that you don't really have time to deal with the other guys. And they got some good guys. Akeem Hicks is a beast, and that other guy that came in for a sack was pretty good. But, no, my only real point was, you brought up that Buffalo game and what a surprise that was at the time. And maybe, looking back, we're kind of left with that same surprise after yesterday. Maybe there was something to see there in that Buffalo game that we didn't pay much attention to just because it was early in the season and it was such a shocker. I mean, losing at home to the Buffalo Bills and the way that we lost, kind of is a microcosm of what happened for the rest of the year, and nobody saw it coming. either that game or the end of this season. But here we are at the end of the season trying to figure out what the heck's going on. And you're right about Zimmer and Spielman. I think they'll be back, and I'm glad they're coming back. I think that's a good decision. I think you need continuity and stability. But like you said, we talk about some of these players that might not come back, and some players that will come back, and if they should or not. I mean, we've got a lot of questions on the offensive line, questions in the defensive secondary, questions at quarterback, questions at running back. I think the receivers are pretty good, could use a third receiver. But, yeah, I mean, it's just a kind of a shock. You know, you thought they'd come out and play a little bit more determined than they did, and they just kind of, you know, didn't do that. I thought maybe if they played a little bit better or came out a little bit more juiced or something like that, perhaps the game could have gone another way, or maybe found some resolve halfway through the game and decided to get their crap together. But, you know, they didn't do that,
right.
And now they're going home, and we're moving on.
Yeah, I mean, what happened to the back against the wall that we see with athletes all the time? Back against the wall, dude. Win and you're in. And you're right. They didn't really ever figure it out enough beyond even getting a couple, you know, those 10 points. They didn't. We've seen that with the offense where it finally clicks, and then it can go. Okay, now we're gonna win. Okay, cool. But you're right, man. It's just we just didn't have that spark. And before we get into Zimmer and Cousins, as far as our opinions on them, because like you said, we do know that they're coming back unless they plan on getting hired someplace else. They've both been told that they're back by the big Ziggy. But just the way we started the season, you know, beating the Niners in a tighter game probably. I mean, we were in control of the game most of the game. The scorecard reads, you know, 74-16, or scoreboard, I should say. Here I am talking boxing scorecard, 24-16, and then the Packer game. And that Packer game, and even that game right there, you're thinking, you know, defensively we knew we were going to get stuff figured out somewhat, because we just, you know, this talent, the coaching, we were going to figure it out. But we felt really good after that game offensively, and we, you know, clearly should have won that game twice, and the missed field goals, and that's a whole nother. We didn't even talk about that yet, because I guess we've been just talking about the whole freaking last couple of years, actually. But you're right about that Buffalo game. And, you know, when we talk, I mean, we're going to get into Cousins and other stuff as well, but if you pinpoint Cousins, there's a couple of games that were, you know, just bad, and they were his fault. And that was the first one where you went, man, yeah, you can't get down 14 to zip like that. Maybe that play, sure, but you got to protect the ball better, yada, yada, yada. But then the Rams game, especially being at home, man. And, you know, you usually have a stinker per year. But for that to come at home and how non-competitive that 27-6 loss was, that was rough. But after that, the positivity on offense was popping. And you could see slowly but surely after that Rams game, because that Rams game, once again, we're feeling, dude, kind of felt in a sense, because it was a road game like that Green Bay game where you're like, dude, okay, dude, we're right, we're there. That's a road game. That's no big deal. We lost it. Sure, we could, you know, everybody remembers Anthony Barr running behind Gurley and behind all these. And you notice they didn't put him much in pass coverage after that point. We had him rushing the QB, and all of a sudden he's like, hey, I'm back. And you're like, yeah, but that shows you're limited. But anyway, but then, Aaron, Philly got that nice key win we needed on the road at that time. And they're, you know, they are technically a playoff team, obviously, right? Not technically. I mean, they are. So that was like, okay, then we just, you know, handled Arizona, and then a road game at the Jets. And I remember at that time, okay, 3 in a row, the defense is starting to tighten up. Back-to-back 17, you know, point given up. And when even at that New Orleans game, we weren't crushed. 30-20, it is what it is. But you and I know what was going on in that game. Those 2 key plays turned around the whole game, and that is football. We talked about this last week too, the ifs and only if and coulda, shoulda, woulda. But when you look at that game and you look at what we did to Drew Brees and you look at how we outgained him for a good chunk of that game, it was still like, okay, dude, we're okay. No big deal. The Saints are number 1 or whatever at that time, or vice versa. We're right there with the Rams. We just need to win, get the bye. We had that late bye, and then we got the Bears game. Took care of Detroit, 10 sacks or whatever it was, 12, 10, whatever the hell it was. We just devoured them. We had 19 sacks or 18 sacks on them this year. That's crazy. But then when we came out, and sure, it was a road game, but when we came out, and I remember us talking about how this is really going to be either the start of turning it around and seeing this Bears team and see what they're really working with, and we found our gear. The defense is improving. The offense is still steady. Okay, now we go into the stretch run. And the stretch run it was, the Bears, the Packers, New England, Seattle. It was a hell of a stretch. Now we ended up losing 3 out of 4. But the overwhelming theme in that, I remember getting that text and reading it later. I didn't read it at the time, but you said, this has just been, we've managed a way to look decent to really good at times on offense, but the offensive line is just, it's not really that good, and we're finding that out real quick. We found a way to scheme around it to make it look halfway decent. We knew the running game wasn't going well at that time, but we were still putting up yards, as far as passing at that time, and it's like the theme going through the whole damn game. Last night or yesterday, the same thing. These games, the New Orleans games, the Rams game, the Bears game, the New England, the Seattle. We've talked about this, Aaron. We're right there. It's 6-6 with 13 minutes left. It's 10-3. We're right fucking at the doorstep. We just couldn't kick that thing in. It's like knocking on it. Oh, no one answered. Okay, let's go. Now let's go. They're probably busy. They're eating dinner. Let's just go. No, you gotta knock that fucking door in. And that was the theme, and I think that's what was so frustrating with that when we played the good to great teams, and especially when that added on a defense to that good to great team like the Bears. Then it looked, all of a sudden, the offense just fell on its face. And the little holes and that we couldn't run, that all got even more exploited when we played good teams, and they let us have it. They closed out games. And that was a theme against the good teams, man, in Buffalo, I guess. But that was the theme down the stretch. And just to kind of let you have some overview thoughts as well, I kind of just took us through the schedule and the feelings of how we were and whatnot. But that's also why I'm frustrated. I'm pissed. It's a day after. We're 24 hours removed. But I also know how close that shit was and how we're right there to win some of these games. We could have got not a first round bye, but we could have had home field. We win 2 or 3 of them, that type of thing. That's why I don't think we have as many issues as it feels like we do right now, because I know it's so close. And we'll get into the offensive line. We'll get into Cousins and all that, and Spielman and Zimmer. But just your thoughts on how the season played out. And I remember coming off that bye, Aaron, and both of us were pretty confident that we were going to actually – I can't remember how we picked or whatever, but I remember saying, all right, dude, we're going to find out just how good this Bears team is. And boy, did we ever, especially the defense.
Yeah, I mean, as an overview of the season, I think I concur with you. They just gave you enough to keep giving you that hope of thinking, okay, just that little fix and we'll win the next one, or that little fix and we'll get that next one, or let's not do that next time and maybe we'll get the win. And just kind of all year sort of lingered at that, and then we'd go ahead and beat teams that we should, quote unquote, beat, and we'd beat them pretty soundly. And so then we come up and we go up against another team and give them a shot, and we beat them, and the Eagles weren't playing well at the time when we played them, and so on and so forth, right on down the line until we get to, like you said, the first Bears game, when I thought, okay, this is going to be it. We both kind of talked about it. It's like either we're working with smoke and mirrors here or we've got something that we can build on. And the Bears just showed us exactly what was wrong with our offense from the first kickoff to the last kickoff. And they came out and they just kicked our tail in the offensive line. Remember, I still see Khalil Mack trucking Riley Reef with one arm.
Yeah, that's right. On his way to the QB, like, excuse me, I'm going to push that dude into him. If I can't get to him, I'm going to push him into him and get the sack.
And then after that, we both said, okay, well, maybe this or maybe that. But I think we both knew, and I think most of Vikings Nation knew that, yeah, this is going to be rough because now not only did we use smoke and mirrors to get this far, but now we can't use them anymore because every team's going to see this tape and they're going to know what kind of mess our offensive line is now. For 3 years, like we've talked before, you probably figure you kick the can down the road as far as the offensive line goes, and they've made some attempts at shoring it up. I don't know if it's been whoever's checking out the offensive line that are available or whoever's evaluating the talent. But they haven't done the greatest job, and we brought in, Boone, and he was in and out in a year, and we brought in a few other guys. Reef and Remmers, we brought them in. Reef stood up pretty well, but Remmers has been.
And then we move them, Some of these guys we've moved, too. Hey, you've been a tackle all your career, including college? We'll move you to guard.
And that didn't work out, and I think we can all say that now that Remmers is not a guard. Now we can put him back at tackle, but at some point you got to cut bait. And I'm not saying that the whole offensive line is terrible from top to bottom, but we definitely have to improve on it. And excuse me a second.
Yeah,
we definitely have to improve on it. And if we don't improve on it, we're just going to be stuck in this thing now. There's a lot that can go in the offensive line, and you can say this and you can say that. Maybe if we had a coordinator who could, use better smoke and mirrors, but it's this. I mean, it's football 101. It's your offensive line. Now, how do you kick that can down the road year after year after year, and be competent at your job? Now, I'm a huge fan of Spielman. I think he does a great job. I'm not really ripping on him because I think he probably had his reasons. And hell, he's tried. He's brought people in, but you can't make free agents come here. You can't. You can draft. That's my biggest thing is like, you should have paid more attention, at least in last year's draft, because Cousins at his best is not a rollout guy. He's not a run for the first down type of guy. He's a pocket passer, and he's got to have a clean pocket. And they knew that in Washington, and we knew that coming in here. So how do you deny that and go on thinking you're going to have a decent year with the kind of offensive line you had? Now, I know we lost Tony Sperano, which, was a tragedy, and maybe that had a big effect in the room, but, that's just not – you can't look at it with clear eyes and say, okay, that's going to get us through the season. I mean, it's your offensive line. It's the base of your offense. But nonetheless, you've got great skill position players. Some of them are elite. You've got Diggs and Thielen who are top of the league. You've got Cook's a good running back, if not great. We'll see about that next year and going forward. Latavius Murray is what he is, and he does a good job. But, when you hit that Bears wall, which we did, not only did that tell us about where we were at, but that told us where the Bears were at. And here we are at last week of the season, which we thought going into the season was going to be a gimme. And no, it turns out it wasn't. The Bears came up. They came up big time. So now we got to worry about how are we going to draft for that Bears defensive line. If you're not thinking about that going forward, then maybe you don't deserve to be the general manager. I'm not sure. But, that's a young, strong defensive line that we're going to have to contend with for the next 3, 4, 5 years.
There's no doubt about it. There is no doubt about it. And a couple other themes in general, which if you've been listening on a weekly basis, you've heard these themes. I'm actually reading off zonecoverage.com, a couple of them. Well, the obvious one, short yardage failures. I mean, that's a very telling thing, not just about your offensive line, but just in general. Just in general, it limits your play calls, and people just not, they just know, dude, you're done. And when you look at the third and fourth down short yardage, and just from 1 to 3 yards, some of these stats, and this is where I'm coming with zonecoverage.com, giving them some of this credit here for the research. 28th in first down percentages, only 55%, which is below. The runs up the middle. It's a lot of people, they even said it right here, the stigma was you can't run it up the middle, and they kept trying it, but actually they all, out of 111 times in those short yardage situations, 1 to 3 yards, we ran it up the middle only 41 times, which is tied for fifth fewest in the league. But we were going to other spots, and that was the problem. And just on those downs, we averaged 2.2 yards per carry, and we converted 22 out of 41 first downs in those spots. And that was, if you look at the average, it's well below the league average. And we said it before, if quarterbacks, if you don't have Cam Newton, which only one team has, if you don't have Cam Newton, then quarterback sneak shouldn't be your best running play. You know what I mean? It really shouldn't. And that old saying about Leroy Horde back in the day, Minnesota Vikings fans remember Leroy Horde. You need a yard, he'll get you 3. You need 5 yards, he'll get you 3. And that's really how it felt like. And Cousins, like you said, now he'll roll out off a play action. He can do that stuff, but you're right, as far as getting out of the pocket and Russell Wilson it, that's just not his game. That's not his game. Not at all. And also, just in short yardage, we also passed the second most times, too. And it just, there's so many stats I could keep going, and I won't. But when you look at, we were 6th in first down percentage last year. It's just, and obviously the pressure, we know that, it was, I think, their second most pressures. And the other guy was Houston, and he's a running quarterback. And same with sacks and all that. You got to add sacks in there when running quarterbacks, because as we know, even if it's a designed run, when it has to do with the quarterback, they got to get to the line of scrimmage. Otherwise, it goes down in the books as a sack. But, it's just so many. We allowed 279 pressures last year, 200. There's just so many. And then we also talked about we need, the pressure in general at times against some of those great teams and good to great teams, how we didn't on defense. Although overall we played great enough, great in spots and good enough to win. We've mentioned that plenty of times, but we were middle of the pack to low when it comes to sacks, even with those back-to-back games that we had against Detroit, and just steady pressure and not giving up those chunk plays. And sometimes we were missing some key players on defense, and that could have played a role as well. But, we did develop some depth on the defensive line without Griff. We created a lot of depth in the secondary, and like you said, there's going to be some question marks there, no doubt about it, like who do you keep, who do you cut? This isn't going to be a 100% free agent, so we're just going to kind of give our first impressions and as far as cap money, because we don't know who's going to take the pay cuts and how much that's going to be and who we're just going to outright cut, So there's just a handful of themes that just stayed with us, man, and they just wouldn't go anywhere. And like you said, they knew what we were going to do with the smoke and mirrors by the time he got to them, and that's just, you can't play winning football like that. You just can't when you're so one-dimensional, and that dimension doesn't work. as far as let's go defense first because it's less to talk about. Yeah, we're definitely going to have to, at least we have depth to maneuver, whether it's Sendejo, who's going to be at 5.5. Waynes, which we know we can keep him for one more year, but you don't know what you're going to do there or the future of him on the squad. So, I mean, there are some I think we have some flexibility, but it will come down to Sheldon Richardson and Anthony Barr when it comes to keeping our own on defense. But you're right about that that especially the depth in the secondary. There's some decisions we're going to have to make, but it won't be that it could be impactful, but I don't think it'll hurt us that much only because of some of the depth and the fact that we play so much damn nickel, and you play so much damn nickel in this.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about the secondary first, because I think overall defensively, like you said, there's some big decisions. Some you named, some you didn't. One of the biggest ones I think that you didn't name is, what do you do about Everson Griffin? Now, he was one guy before he went out. He comes back, and he's a different kind of guy, and yesterday they just ran at him and ran over him. And he doesn't seem to be the same player. Now, does that say he can't ramp up and become that player that he was? But, I don't know. I don't know what we do with him. I got a feeling he might not be here next year. I don't know what exactly his contract situation is. But I'm not saying he's a cut. I just don't know. But there are other guys who are question marks. I think primarily you're looking at Sendejo. Does he come back? He's hurt. Do we cut him? What do we do with him? Does he take a pay cut just to come back? Does he go somewhere else? We don't know. I don't know. Sherrills is another one. Does he make the squad next year? Waynes, do you pick up the fifth, or do you go ahead and pick him up on a contract? Or you try to use him as trade bait to get a defensive lineman. Right. We got some room to move there in the secondary with Mike Hughes coming back and Holton Hill coming up and playing well. I like them both those two young guys. Mm-hmm. Rhodes most likely will be back, but you don't know. There's a question. I mean, he could be trade bait or also something that you could move on from. You're right. The main ones are Barr and Richardson, and that's even a tough call because Anthony's going to get some money on the free agent market. He said he wanted to test the waters, and that means if he tests the waters, it's going to be big money to pay Anthony Barr. Now, you might be able to move some things around. Of course, you could franchise him and piss him off, possibly, but I think if that's an option, you do that with Anthony Barr. You franchise.
I don't think we can franchise him money-wise. It just doesn't line up.
Yeah, well, that's unfortunate because I'm big on Barr, keeping him, and I'm big on Richardson. Now, Richardson didn't have his greatest game yesterday, but I really like him. I think, he adds a lot to the defensive line as far as giving us 4 threats instead of 3 and some guy you can double. So, I like Richardson. I like Barr. It's a money situation. What do you want to do? And maybe that's where Rhodes comes in. Maybe he moves on. Maybe you don't sign Waynes. There's a lot of things in the secondary, so I guess I've brought up more questions than I have solutions. My solutions, in my opinion, would be you let Sendejo go. You try to move Waynes. If you can't move Waynes, see if you can take a smaller contract. If not, you let him go, and you bring in Hughes and you bring in Hill as they're back, and maybe you draft yourself another corner that you can bring up. The big question, Griffin, I don't think he's back. I will say that today, December 31st, 2018, I don't think he's back. I don't know why. I don't know what reason they will say or why, but I just don't think he's back on the squad next year. So that gets down to Richardson and Barr. Now, if it's a choice, it's a tougher choice than when you asked me this question before.
It's a choice, and we talked about it probably midway through the season, I'd say. We talked about it. It's a choice. You can't have them both. Yeah. It's just not possible. So who do you pick? Do you pick a linebacker? What changed your mind on wanting Barr so bad now? Was it him,
I think,
getting at the
quarterback
more?
Out the season.
Come again?
I think it's the way he finished out the season. I thought he played really, really well coming down the stretch of the season. He's one of the leaders of the defense. There's a lot of intangibles with Anthony Barr. My mind hasn't changed. It's up in the air again, and I don't know, which one. Can you go get yourself a linebacker that can impact at a smaller price and still be able to run your defense as well? letting Barr go, or can you find yourself a defensive tackle in the draft or in free agency that can come in and do what Richardson did, possibly even better? I think as far as athletes are concerned, Barr is the superior athlete, in my mind. I think that you take the superior athlete, I'm going to say Barr, with the right to change my opinion going into next season, but I really feel like Barr's one of those players that is so unique in what he can do that letting go of him could be a real mistake. I think you can replace Richardson. What are your thoughts? Because I'm still up in the air, but if you put a gun to my head, I'm going with Anthony Barr. You do what you can to keep Anthony Barr.
Well, the one thing is the athleticism is there, no doubt. It's always been there. However, from the defensive tackle spot, Richardson, that's the way you got to look at it. How athletic are defensive tackles? Not that athletic generally. The great ones, they generally can be, especially at that position, not the big boy, fat boy in the middle position. You know what I mean? Not the nose, but you know what I mean? So you do have to, I don't think it's as big as gap as maybe you do athleticism from each respected position. Because we know a defensive interior guy is not going to be as good as an outside linebacker athletically. I don't think that's a fair comparison. But if you go based off athleticism at that position compared to other people and base it off this, then I think it closes the gap. But you're right. The guy is, we knew that right from the start. This guy is a freaking athlete, no doubt about it. However, he's one-dimensional. And if we're going to pay a guy, I don't want to pay a guy who can't cover. I don't want to do that. I guess that's my thing. And when we had him covering early in the season, we saw the back of his jersey over and over and over. And those 3 or 4 games that he missed, probably about 4 if you count him leaving the game that he left too. We were okay. Now you can go back and we can look at who they actually played, and sure, no doubt about that. You could do that. But I guess my thing is, it wouldn't be one guy that you go get more than likely linebacker. It'd be a two guys that can do. This guy can do kind of what we got. This guy can do that. That guy can do that. We're gonna mix them. We're gonna blend them in. And then of course you probably want to add some depth. If Barr does leave, no doubt about it. Now I'm not gonna be pissed if we sign him. No, but the thing is, he closed the season because we had him pushing out, doing what he likes to do. And he is, in my opinion, made perfectly for a 3-4 defense. I think he's a better fit in the 3-4. I just want a guy that's multi-purpose. I'm not going to say one-dimensional, but he's not a cover guy. And I need that if I'm going to pay somebody that. Not only that, but what the defensive line allows the linebackers to do, that helps too. So I'm still actually on Sheldon Richardson, personally. But you're right, Sendejo, gone. He's $5.5 million, gone. I think Everson, I wouldn't be surprised if he's gone, but no matter what, he's coming down on that 11.9. I'm looking at a couple of I'm actually looking at Andy Carlson's show. Saw this on Twitter. Just kind of looked up Viking stuff, and this popped up. He's got a couple of these, reconstructive candidates. He actually got it through Spot Track as well. I should credit them actually, not him. Now that I see him say that. And they're just looking at like the cap numbers and what it would count if you did, actually just dump them and the kind of the pros and cons. And Rhodes will be back here based off what it would take to dump him and what he's making. He'll be back. But I'm with you on Everson. If he's not all the way out, because I think you have Weatherly, and then you can add a layer, a younger layer as well potentially, or a veteran layer maybe. And we still have Johnson as well because Hunter's a full-time player now. So it has been for a little bit. So you can put Johnson on the edge if you needed to. if we could bring him back, or maybe someone like that. But I'm there with you. Everson's going to have to come on down on that 11.9 regardless. You know what I mean? His cap is only 1.2. Go ahead. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to come up from my boy Barr here. Now, you're right. He does seem to fit well in a 3-4. You're also right that I thought maybe you understood the fact that I was talking about position for position as far as athleticism was concerned, so I'm glad you got around to seeing that. Anthony Barr is by no stretch of the means one-dimensional. I think that, yeah, he can't cover wide receivers, but he can cover tight ends. He can cover backs. He can cover those type of guys out of the backfield. Asking him to put him on a wide receiver like the Rams did, that was just genius on the Rams' part of putting him in those positions as far as our defense was concerned. But Anthony Barr can cover anything but a wide receiver.
We needed safety help on that play. There's no doubt about that. That was
the man can blitz, the man can cover.
Play.
Sure, the man can blitz, the man can cover. If my only question with him, I have two. These are my two concerns about signing Anthony Barr. One, that big number on the cap. That's huge. It's going to be a lot of money going on the cap, and we need that money now that we have Cousins and all the other things. The other question is, this is a contract year. Are we just seeing him contract play? Is he going to go back to what he was last year where we're like, where's Anthony Barr? What's Barr been doing?
And it wasn't even that great of a year in his contract year, if we're being honest. It was up and down, and that's my problem with him. Besides the first year and a half, he's been up and down. And you're saying he can cover these other guys. I agree, he has a better chance against those guys, but I don't see him knocking balls down in coverage much. I just don't. Now, maybe he's covered them so well that they don't throw the ball to him over there. I don't know. I just don't see him. I don't think he can cover as well as you're saying. You're right about the wide receiver, though. No friggin' linebacker can cover wide receiver, and he got dogged out on that. That should have been safety help on that wide receiver play. No doubt about it.
And now our boy Richardson, you got him signed. He's came in for 1 year. If you let him go, who's going to play that spot? And can you bring in someone who's going to be just as good or better? I don't think you can. I think that's probably with our cap situation and the situation that we have. I mean, that's a good deal. We got a good deal on him, and it'd be great to, get that locked in. It's just if we have to pick one or the other, which you seem to think that we do, and I'm there with you. I think we have to choose one or the other too. It's just such a tough choice. It sucks to be in the situation,
But
and I
really
think
guys we've kept, though? How many guys have we kept on this defense? At some point, something's got to give on this side. I guess that's
absolutely.
My thing. It's not when we say cap, we're not up against it on the cap. We actually don't know our number right now because the end of the year happens, and then because we don't know, who's going to take pay cuts and all that, or who's going to be gone. So we can't necessarily say our cap number. But last I checked, we were 7th most money to spend. So we are not in a cap casualty. We're not in a you're going to lose some guys on this defense that we've managed to keep so many of these guys. I think that's why I kind of think down to those two. I don't think it's really because of the cap. We just got to worry about the other side of it, and especially offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, the money's got to come from somewhere. And, I hate to see either one of those guys go, but it looks like one of them's going to have to. And I guess it'll be really something to see when they decide to choose. I think, either if they choose Barr, we're going to say, oh, you should have kept Richardson. If they kept Richardson, we're going to say, oh, you should have kept Barr. Right. So, it's – and then you got the other guys to think about, too. Waynes. Do you let Waynes go, get his money off the cap or whatever, and then use that for one of those guys? And I mean, it's going to be tricky to see how they pull this off. But, yeah, I would keep Everson at a pay cut. I just don't – I don't know what happened with him mentally. Yeah. And how that's affected his game.
The same.
He doesn't seem
he
to
wasn't
be the
same. Nowhere near the same. He had like one good game that we even called his name.
And it's concerning, but I like Everson, man, and I hope he can come back. And if he wants to take a pay cut and come back, and maybe come back as depth or a starter that gets subbed out a lot, that's fine, man. I'm totally down with it. He's a good player, but he needs to get back up to that level, and I'm not sure he can with his new mental adjustment. So that's interesting if you're looking forward to. And Sendejo, I think you're right, man. He's gone, and Sherrills might not make the team, and so, but he might. You know, you never know. It's just Waynes is that talker.
Yeah.
Like, do you think you see Waynes next year? Or do you think he's gonna maybe be trade bait or maybe move on? I don't think we won't cut him. I mean, but his contract, we've got him for the year if we want to play hardball, correct?
Yeah. Yep. We do control him right now. You know, if Hughes hadn't got hurt, I'd feel a lot more comfortable moving on. But the fact that we could keep him for another year on it, you know, it kind of feels like we should, because you just never know. I mean, in a weird way, Hughes' injury happening early in the season does help him for being ready next season. But we never got a good look at him, though. You know what I mean? We got to look at him. We just don't know exactly what we're working with, and it's not like he got to improve because he's been rehabbing. You know, there's a couple of muscles on his leg that are much stronger now than they've ever been in his life. But as we know, that doesn't mean much when it comes to that. Anything else on the defense? Let's get to the offense here a little bit here. So,
yeah, let's go ahead and move on to the offense. Treadwell's a question for me. I think, do you bring him back or let him go? I think he's still got a year left on his rookie deal, but he's really not panned out to be anything good. He's one guy that I really worry about him going to another team blowing up. You know,
right.
I hate to see that, but if he doesn't do it here, then, I mean, you don't really have a choice. You know, he could be the next Cordell Patterson and go somewhere else, or good Belichick gets a hold of him and turns him into an all-pro. I don't know, but he's not doing it here, and this is where he's got to do it if he wants to stay on the team. We're going to need to pan out some money for some offensive line. I think we bring in at least one guy in free agency, and hopefully that works, and maybe get the rest from the draft. But, you know, we need two guards, basically, Chris. I mean, we need more than that. But the remedy right now, quickly, is two competent guards that can really help out this line, or maybe in a center and a guard and move Elflein to a guard. But then you need depth behind that, and where's that going to come from? Because I don't like pretty much anybody we got. Maybe Rashad Hill can maybe make the team as like a backup tackle, but the rest of it,
that Avante who got hurt, you know, that Avante dude who, you know, he could be depth or whatever.
You know, and so, you know, you got to think. So we got to pay two guards, and hopefully we get them in the draft. I did check up a little bit going into this year's draft of what the offensive line class would look like. They say it's good but not great. There's nobody like last year where you had some really premier guards in there and some premier tackles. They all kind of came out in the same year last year. So this year's kind of down. There's a kid from Kansas State I kind of like. But, you know, we're at 18, and if they make another run on offensive linemen, which appears to be the premium, I think offensive linemen are going to go pretty high in this draft, seeing how the league's going. So, you know, 18 might be too low again, so you might have to move up. So, you know, I don't know. Can you count on the draft? Maybe draft for one and free agency for another, or maybe just throw your money out there in free agency, see what happens, and then fill in the holes with the draft. But like we said earlier a few weeks ago, like I would be satisfied with the first 5 rounds being offensive linemen. Just throw numbers at it. Bring in 7 of them. Bring in 8 of them. Bring in 10 of them.
Right.
Because you need to find 4. You need to find 4 linemen that can play in this league and be effective. If you can do that, we're in pretty good shape. As far as the line goes, I mean, against Chicago is going to have a dominant defensive line unless something happens with those guys. You got to be able to cover Mack. If you can find a way to get a guy that can take Mack one-on-one, you're in business. I don't think they made that guy yet, but hopefully he's out there somewhere. And then you got, I don't know what else. They're talking about giving Thielen a little bit more money. How do you feel about that? I mean, yes, he deserves more money, but can we give it to him this year, or do we give him some kind of weird contract where it pays off in 10 years or something like that? I mean, he does deserve more money. He's a top 5 receiver getting paid, I think, the 45th highest paid wide receiver, so that's got to come up. So they might have to work with that a little bit. But offensively, I think we're in good shape. Obviously, Cousins, we can't do anything with him. We're stuck with him, so we're going to have to find a way to make that work, and I think to give him the best offer.
2 years.
Sure,
now, he can come down on his money, though.
Sure.
That's for sure. He'll need to slice up a little bit about that. I fully want him to do that, no doubt about it. If we're asking other dudes to do it, he's got to be right there, too, especially if it's going to help him get some protection. But the Thielen thing, sure, they could. I doubt they do this, but they could just, like X the current one, crumble it up, throw it out, and restructure it or whatever. But it's really just going to be an extension. So that extension won't hit until, I think 2 years or whatever. So the reason why he's on a so-so deal is because he hadn't got 1,000 yards yet. He hadn't.
Mm-hmm.
He hadn't. He was just. You could just, that first year where it was like, oh, dude, he was just short of 1,000. But you're like, okay, and that's when he signed. And then 2 years later, now, with these 2 seasons that he's had now he really wishes that was the time he would have signed, and that's why Diggs got a bigger deal. It's all about when you're free agent, what the market's telling you, and whatnot. But yeah, I think we'll just be fine there because we can extend to him, and it won't be hurt us right now. Obviously, there's just certain things that we can't have tackles play guard. You know what I mean? We just can't do it. We bring in Riley Remmers. Like, nah, dude. Like, he's probably going to be. I'd say we keep Riley over Remmers. As far as the offensive line goes.
That's agreed. I agree with that.
You know what I mean? Avante,
Yeah.
I'll bring him back because he did look good. He got hurt in the beginning of the year. You never know how those guys, respond on that. That Bryant Jones never really got in there just yet. So we'll see if, you never know. He's an Alabama kid or whatever. Maybe he could do something. I really don't know. But you're right. I say, that's the thing that's so hard to talk about it right now is because we're going to have that long free agent period before the draft. So we can really get a look at how much we got to throw at the draft early or move up, like you said, which I think we should anyway. Okay, well, what do we get in free agency? Okay, well, then we don't need that as much. Let's get that now, So I think that plays into it. And that's something, like I said earlier, we will be doing a pre-free agency when we really get that cap number to where we, think we kind of know where it is. There's always some trimming when it comes to these deals in general, but we get a better shot and to see what's out there because as we know, people get cut casualties happen all the time or trades. I mean, the fact that they got Khalil in the season is crazy. That caliber of player in the freaking season is just nutty. But yeah, I mean, it's really just, I agree, bring in bodies on that side. We had so many damn wide receivers this year. Let's do that with the offensive line. And as we kind of wrap it up, we're going to talk Gophers in just a moment, that Georgia Tech game. Let's get into this stuff now, okay? Because we talked or messaged back and forth. I guess that's talking nowadays, isn't it? We messaged back and forth about Cousins. We were kind of on a different page. But before we get to that, Zimmer and Spielman, are you still on Zimmer and Spielman to be here? I am. I do not want to fire Zimmer. This whole, especially with 8 freaking vacancies. You know how hard it's going to be. It's hard to, like, there's that many. That's why there's so many people fired every freaking year. To just throw away quality coaches. You just can't do it in my mind. And I'm not saying he's Belichick, but he had a much better first run than Belichick. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't want to throw him out and cast him away. I don't think, now, do I think he may have to give up play calling at some point? Sure, I'd be agreeable to that. I'm cool with that. That's fine with me because maybe he will be able to focus on other stuff. And Spielman, sure, the Treadwell thing is probably his worst pick, but I'm not going to Monday morning quarterback that. I was happy as hell when we got what we thought in improving Treadwell because of the injury he had his sophomore year. I thought, dude, just wait until the second or third year. And Cousins sure gave him a chance. Probably too many, we've tried. Move on from Laquan, but I can't just focus on Laquan when it comes to Spielman because just at that position, we've drafted or picked up free agency pretty well, haven't we? But also, in general, I like what he does. And also, when we talk about cap in general, I mentioned the cap and how we're We're not in horrible shape by any stretch. But a lot of it was because we knew at some point it was going to be Teddy and then Sam. We were ready to sign these guys long term. So we had that money allocated for a quarterback that was going to make 20, 25, whatever, 30. What's-his-nose was making 20 already. So that was already allocated. Not to say it's not going to hit you somewhat, but we're not as – a lot of people are kind of lost in this cap. I'm not saying we got the most money to spend, but we're not just like, oh, dude, we're screwed now. I'll tell you what, just across the state border, they're in much worse shape with that contract where he's at in his career, in that team, how they're built. I'll tell you that right now. And he's a Hall of Famer, obviously. First ballot, just put him in right now if you want. I did want to say that, too, that we did schedule this money. So it was sitting right there, just Teddy and Sam alone what they were making, and we knew we couldn't sign those guys. Now, I can understand saying, we should have signed, the cheaper quarterback. And that's cool. However, I don't think that he would have done good in this year either. We were one of the best screen pass offenses in the league last year. We weren't that this year. We were second in attempts in rushing last year. We weren't that this year. It's a whole different ball game, and just to come on that offensive line and look, that was pause. I need to pause that majorly. I don't know how that just came out of my mouth, but I kind of did it again right there. But let's keep moving. I think people, you know what, I haven't even allowed. I get lost sometimes. Zimmer, Spielman, go right ahead, and then move into Cousins too. I'll let you have that because I just got long-winded. I lost myself, Aaron.
Oh, that's all right, man. It happens. All right, Spielman and Zimmer. Zimmer, I love, man. I think he's a great coach. And, again, if you get rid of him, who's going to replace him that's going to be any better? You tell me, and we'll talk about if we can replace Zimmer. I don't think we can. I like Mike Zimmer. I think he does. Now, turning over play calling, like you said, I could probably agree to that. Marvin Lewis just got fired, and they're best buddies. So, maybe there's a spot for Marvin Lewis on our coaching staff. Maybe come in. Some guy he trusts to call plays. I don't think he trusts Edwards to call plays. I don't think Zimmer trusts anybody but Mike Zimmer.
Great point.
Yeah,
but if he's gonna, that'd be the guy. That's a great point, Aaron.
Right. And I think in a job like that where you could be gone one day, who can you trust? Really, it's tough. Got to be a tough line of work. And so I like Zimmer. I just like there's no nonsense. He makes a good team. There hasn't been any trouble with the cops out there. It's been a good deal. And I know that Ziggy said he likes the Rooneys out of Pittsburgh and what they do. And they just hire a coach and they go until the coach says he's done. So, Tomlin's been there forever. Before that, it was Cowher. He was there until he didn't want to be there anymore. And Knox before that. So, the longevity, I like that. I like a guy who can kind of see a generation, old players kind of come through, sort of cycle through and kind of get a look of a long view of 10, 12 years of coaching a football team. And I like him, and I think the town likes him. I don't think Zimmer is going anywhere, and I'd be really surprised if he did, and shocked, and I'd be a little unhappy, too. I really like Mike Zimmer, one eye or two eyes or whatever you got. Now, Spielman, on the other hand, Spielman's been here a while. I like Rick Spielman as a GM. There's two things I question about his ability as a GM, and one's kind of going to be sort of a pressing need going forward here is his evaluation of two things seems to be a problem, the offensive line and quarterbacks. Now, he's brought in quarterbacks that he's liked, and they haven't been any good. He signed Josh Freeman, for Christ's sakes. So, there's a problem there with a little bit of evaluation. It couldn't be all him. Maybe it's the scouts. Maybe he doesn't do a lot of evaluation. He just takes people's word that he trusts. But, I think that's been a problem. Offensive lineman, he's brought in a lot. He's drafted a lot. Nobody's really stuck with the exception of the kid this year, O'Neal. So I think there's a problem there. And here we are about to draft 4, 5, 6 offensive linemen, hypothetically. And we put Spielman in that position. That could get dicey. But, you got to give him the benefit of the doubt because everybody else that he's picked up some great players the time he's here. Got Steph Diggs in the 5th round. Got Daniil Hunter in the 3rd. These are all pro players that he's picked up in low rounds. As far as that, his cap work whoever's doing it over there. I think his name's Brzezinski, but I don't know if that's his name. He's working magic over there with the salary cap work. And so I think all that is all intact. It's all where it needs to be. We just got all those new facilities. I mean, everything there, front office-wise, I think, and coaching is fine. I don't think there's any problem with that. Maybe some changes in scheme. You know, Zimmer can maybe go into the lab and come up with something for next year that he likes a little better. I know he tried to do it this year, but maybe he needed a little bit more time, so he's got the off-season this year to maybe implement what he wanted to going into this year. You know, and also Zimmer's got a problem with he's got to find an offensive coordinator that he trusts. And he hasn't been able to do that since he's been here. And, you know, I know it's a trust issue with him. You know, I'm sure Norv probably challenged him, and Zimmer was like, screw that, you're gone, you know. And he needs to find some guy, and maybe Stefanski's that guy. And I hope he is, because I like Stefanski. And now he's going to interview by the Browns, I heard. So, you know, what would you rather do, stay here and work with Kirk Cousins or go off and work with Baker Mayfield, you know? And, God, I'd go work with Baker Mayfield if I was him, but, you know, hopefully he doesn't do that. And, you know, I'm not saying he's the greatest offensive coordinator. We've seen 3 games. You know, he might not be that good, but I think you need continuity there as you do with the rest of the team. And Zimmer can't keep switching up coordinators, especially now that you got a quarterback in. That's going to need some time. And here's the deal with Kirk, man, is like we've got him for 2 more years. There's nothing we can really do about that besides doing something crazy. So what you got to do is you've got to make it the best that you've got to put Kirk in the best situation possible, and that is to give him an offensive line that gives him all the time that he needs. And it's got to be the main thing going forward. We've said it 1,000 times. So Zimmer, Spielman, Cousins, I mean, that's what we've got. Now, how can we make that the best that it can be?
Now, have you kind of turned, though, the last month or two kind of more, I don't know, maybe some of the first half of the season, what we saw out of Cousins is not actually who he was, or the fact that after a while, we've seen this with, you know, quarterbacks, after a while, you start to see ghosts, and all of a sudden things like that first play, not maybe first play, but the first third down play where he overshot Diggs. Is it a combination? Do you think you can build it back up to what we saw in the first half of the season, or are you kind of soured on him in general? Because some of the messages we went back and forth, it kind of seemed like you had soured on him in general.
You know, yeah, we did have those messages, and I haven't softened. I just, you know, I've become resigned to the fact that we've got him for 2 more years, and there's not a heck of a lot we can do about it. Now, I do have a problem with a lot of Cousins. I don't have a problem with 4,000 passing yards, 30 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. I do have a problem with the 10 interceptions and the timing of those interceptions. I have a problem with the touchdowns in garbage time, adding at least 12 of those touchdowns to his total. The 4,000 yards, the fumbles, the blocked throws. Sure, the blocked throws. I don't like. Basically, as a point, I'm saying Cousins physically, as far as his arm, his accuracy, all that stuff, I don't really have a problem with. I think that's all good stuff. My problem with Cousins is, did you see him yesterday? The look in his eyes in a big game, he looked terrified. And I'm not talking about defensive linemen are coming at him terrified. I mean, just the spot terrified. They showed a couple clips of him where they just went to his face when he's back in the pocket, and he just looked like he was sweating bullets back there. You remember Brad Johnson always used to do that joke about Brad Johnson where he'd, oh, shit, you just get rid of the fucking ball?
In preseason, you're in the headlights. We never thought he'd turn out to be what he was because that guy looked so, that's funny.
And that's Brad Johnson in his 2nd year. This is Kirk Cousins in his 8th year as a pro quarterback looking like that. So I think there's problems, and I think Diggs and Thielen have been trying to tell us that all year, that this is not the guy, or at least that they're not happy about it. Because you saw it yesterday, Thielen made it pretty clear on the sideline that he's not happy about the way things go. I don't know exactly what was said, but he's not happy about it. And neither is Diggs, because Thielen and Diggs are kind of like a little nucleus, and, you know, they think about the same way on things. So I think if you lose Stefanski, that's even more problem to it, because I think Stefanski and Kirk have some sort of thing going down where they see things a little bit eye to eye. And, you know, my biggest thing to wrap up this whole Kirk thing, because I don't want to rip the guy, because I think he's a good quarterback. I think he's a businessman, Chris. He's not. I don't think he loves to play football. Honestly, I think he loves to make money, and football's how he does it. I think that you look at his career so far. It's been, goes to Washington, becomes the starter, plays just like he played this season, gets franchised for bigger and bigger numbers. Now, is that his fault? No. Did he plan to do that? Probably not. But he understands the way the money game works in this league. Now, I find it odd that Kirk wasn't nicked up once this season with all the pressure and all. Do you think he's protecting his body? I think he might, and maybe not in the best way. I don't think he's Brett Favre, throwing his shoulder protecting his body. I think he's, don't hit me protecting his body. I think that he's a businessman.
How many times did he get hit? How many times did he get hit throwing the ball and completing it?
Yeah.
We saw that. We talked about that a variety of times. And we said it wouldn't last because he's going to start to fumble and all that, but he showed he's willing to, at least for 12 and a half games or something. Keep going though. Keep going.
Yeah. I mean, I just don't. I think that I don't think in any way that the man is trying to dupe the Minnesota Vikings or anything like that. I just think that, like they said on the broadcast yesterday, that the guy's got his day planned out. Every 20 minutes, he's got it on a spreadsheet, what he's going to do every 20 minutes. And then you're asking that guy to improvise behind the line of scrimmage when the play breaks down. It's not going to happen. This guy's order. And so if his mind works like that, which we're pretty clear now that his mind works like that, then the best thing you have to do is get inside his mind. And what he probably needs in his mind is a clean pocket where he can go through 27 reads and get the ball where he thinks it should go. Now, I have no problem. He can get the ball there. The guy can make any throw.
Sure.
And sometimes he makes throws that you're just like, what the heck? But I don't think anybody's really gotten into Kirk's mind and said, hey, we understand that you're a different breed of dude. I mean, we all know this dude, but he usually doesn't play football. How do you want to play football? What can we do for you?
That sounds like
and another thing I want to just say.
Sounds like a coach.
Yeah.
He's a coach.
Sounds like a coach. Yep. And another thing I want to say is these guys got to take Kirk out, and they got to go have fun, man. If this guy's so wound up, so tight, that he's got to plan his day by 20-minute intervals, this guy needs to go have some fun. They need to go to Vegas, go on a bender, or do something like that, and go have some fun so he can maybe have some fun playing football. Like, I don't think he has fun playing football. I think it's his job. It's what he does. It's how he makes money. It's how he feeds his family. All respectable. But I don't think he has fun. If he had fun, he'd be jacked up for a game like yesterday. He'd be jacked up to go play the Rams. He'd be jacked up to play the Bears at home. He'd be packed. These are things that he'd be excited about. And I don't think you see that fear. What I see is him sitting on the bench, nobody talking to him, nobody getting around him. Then he goes over and talks to somebody, goes back, sits on the bench, and stares at the wall. That's not, something's wrong there. I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it, and I don't necessarily want to point fingers or make up, be speculative about what it is, but I think it's the fact that this is his job. He's a businessman, and he needs to go have fun. They got to go have fun with him, get to know him. That's all coaching. You're right in a sense, but maybe it's the approach that you got to take to get it into his head and see what he sees success in is his head, because we got 2 more years in a damn good football team, and I don't want to waste some guys' careers because we can't figure out what we're going to do with Cousins. Yeah, he's been in this spot for his whole career. Ask people from Washington. They say the same thing that we're going through this year with him. So fix the line, figure out what he needs, and do that. We got 2 years with him. You got to make it so that he can feel like he can progress from where he is, because he's just kind of been the same guy for the last 6 years. And I could go on and on and on. I think part of that is to keep Stefanski if he can.
Tighten up because the show is going to start to fall. I only scheduled the show for a certain amount of time, so we do got to.
All right. Well, I think he keeps Stefanski. I think that's the first step you do in that process.
And speaking of Stefanski, you did say go, coach Mayfield, but you're also going to coach the Browns. So you got to put that into the equation a little bit. As far as would you rather coach him or him? Well, you'd be coaching the Browns, though, not just him. The Browns feel of it and everything like that too. But anyway,
the Browns are looking pretty good. They're coming up, man. Mayfield's good.
I hear you, but every 3-4 years the Browns are coming up, and maybe they will. Either way, it's kind of a joke. Like,
That's a good point. That's a good
Browns,
point. Yeah.
though. You are going to coach the Browns. Many of good coaches have gone there to die. You know what I mean?
In beautiful
and even
Cleveland.
Ponder had a good first season. Ponder had a good first season too, by the way. But I want to address a couple of things about Cousins. And this is towards the fan base in general and some media, not necessarily towards you, as far as talking Cousins. But I just want to get a couple of things straight. When we're talking the Redskins, I've heard a lot of people say that's why they let him go. Well, hold on now. Hold on. You don't just let somebody go and franchise tag him twice in a row. That's not how you go about it. The reason why they couldn't extend him long term is because Snyder is garbage with the money. Always has been, probably always will be. That's him. Throw money at it. It works in my billionaire life. Just throw money at it. That's good. We'll make money. We'll sell the thing down. That's not how it works in football. That's not good. You do not. If you don't want to keep a quarterback, you don't pay him top 5 money back-to-back years. You don't do it. But they couldn't afford him. That's why he left. They couldn't afford him. Now the Jets were willing to pay more than us. A couple other teams were willing to pay as much as we did. But when people get the Case Keenum thing, to me, in this system this year with their offensive line, it's a joke to think Case Keenum would be better than Cousins in this. It's a joke, in my opinion, because it is different. I just went over the stats of being second in rushing. We were one of the better rushing teams last year. We had one of the best screen games. Could you imagine the screen game this year with Cook? And that's Cousins' specialty in the rollout, the play action, and all that. He can move, but not improv move. And I think that's a good distinction of what you were talking about as well. Is he's not going to make a bunch of plays with his feet, but if you roll him out, he can throw the ball and dart it in there, right there. But Case Keenum was in a perfect system, and that offensive coordinator got a head coaching job, So there was something to that, and that was a little different. So you didn't have that guy matching Cousins' skills to the scheme. You had a guy going, this is my way. You can't even barely change the play. And remember, even the way the offensive line, which I'll get into, even the way they block on running the zone block, like they even block different than what we had before. But when you look at that lineup, Berger, whatever the hell that guy's name was, 13-year vet, solid dude. Nothing great, nothing awesome, but he could play center, he could play guard. In the last probably 4 or 5 years, he was solid. He took probably a couple weeks too long to decide if he was going to retire, and maybe we lost out on someone with that. I don't know. But that's one player that was not out of 5. There's only 5 offensive line starters. Then Nick Easton, who was a guard, who was actually showing a lot of promise as a young player, he got hurt in camp. So now you're talking 2. And then you look at our center, he was probably 75% of what he was last year because he couldn't get stronger. He had setbacks in his injury. Did he even practice during training camp? I don't think he did. Maybe at the back end of when they bring it back to the facility, and then they just practice normal. But he didn't get to spend the off season and getting stronger, so he didn't come in even better than what he did last year. So now you're looking at 2 different players in the lineup. We switch a guy to move him to a position he's not, and then we got a center who I really like that center, Pat. I like him a lot, but he even admitted that the off-season messed with him a little bit. So I think that all bears into what we're talking about. And we do have to keep in mind that, he probably had the 4th best year all time as a Viking quarterback, best since Brett Favre, obviously. The key was we were still running the shit out of the ball then. We had AP. In the Pep years, we had Robert Smith. We were a 1,000-yard rushing, team back in Denny Green's too. We ran the ball. It wasn't just passing and that's it. Sure, we had Carter Moss, but it wasn't just passing. So I think a combination of all of that, I think it started to wear on him, and it was clear. We saw him seeing ghosts. Like you said, there's moments where he may have gotten rid of the ball too early when we were complaining that he's still going through his reads before. So I think that played. And not only that, but how many times under Zimmer have we seen not just a quality quarterback, but a Hall of Famer get shut down once a year against Rodgers, once a year against even a quality guy who won't be in the Hall of Fame, but Sanford. And look what we did to Drew Brees this year. That was like his worst game in 3 years. But how come – but we know our defense is nasty, but we don't judge Brees after that game, do we? We don't say, oh, dude, he's not even that good. No, we got after his ass. He couldn't do anything. So I'm not trying to put Brees and Cousins together. He's not a top 5 quarterback, but he can be a top 10, top 12. His numbers bear that out. And the only thing I really have a problem with them is the fumbling thing. But therefore, if you have the most, I think he was either tied for most dropbacks or I think Roethlisberger actually beat him at the end. But you're second in dropbacks. That means you're going to get hit even if you release the ball in time. Let's cut this short. I'm going to shut up. Gopher football, Georgia Tech. I was really, really, really impressed from what I saw. And I'll tell you what. The coaching staff, this is a good game because of that triple option. When you have those couple of weeks to get ready for it, and then you go out and do that, that tells me a lot about this coaching staff because there are certain coaching staffs out there that have this great regular season, but when you can scheme them for a couple of weeks, whether it's an offense that goes awry or something on your team just doesn't look the same way you see it, even with some of these top programs, I saw a whole lot of impressive stuff on that Georgia Tech, man. I'll let you close the show there, buddy.
I don't have a lot to say. I know we're short on time. I'll get moving on this, but I was surprised and impressed with the Gopher football team against Georgia Tech. I was mostly impressed with the offensive line. The two kids on the right side, or I think it's the right side, with Fahalele and Curtis Dunlap. One will be a sophomore. One will be a true freshman next year. We'll only really replace one guy, and Blaze Andrews, another guy on that line who will be a sophomore next year. Redshirt, I think. They just mowed those guys down, and Mo Ibrahim just ran like a beast, and that was good to see. I thought maybe, they played tough defensively. I know they played in the scheme, and they had a lot of guys that they didn't play in that defense, but looks good for next year. A defensive line getting shored up even helps that out, and the recruiting that was done this year will help that out. Tough non-conference next year with South Dakota State is no slouch. And they're the first game of the season. They were up there in the FBS playing North Dakota State and played them pretty tough, if I remember correctly. And then you go into Fresno, who was ranked this year. So you get Georgia Southern. So, yeah, it's not – the schedule is easier as far as the Big Ten's concerned next year, but that first little bit there, they're going to have to play tough first game out against South Dakota State University. So, yeah, that's going to be interesting to see. But the direction of the program is just moving upward. I like where it's at. I like the fact that you're starting to build depth in here in that second or third year of recruiting. So, yeah, I think it was just a really impressive how they came out and played that game and how they won it, really. And also the fact that they were happy to be in Detroit. They seemed happy to be playing in that game. They seemed happy to have won that game. And not taking things for granted and going out and playing football to win. And that's what I really like to see, and I'm really excited for next season. I think it's going to be great, and I think we're on our way up here at the University of Minnesota.
And just a little layer, we did add a defensive, basically like a co-coordinator or some sort of, defensive line specialist is something. We don't know his title just yet, but he's from Maine. He's a guy that in the FCS built his way up at Maine and became the head coach and actually performed pretty well. He's going to be, like I said, to kind of add a little bit on that side because, when we did lose we still needed to add someone on that side if you're just bumping up the coordinator that's taken over. So when you get a head coach, that could really help PJ Fleck recruiting and also just organization. But yeah, I just wanted to add that too. I'll just destroy his name, but that's actually a good to have a head coach on the staff. I like that. But this is now he's stepping up to a different league. Any last words there, sir, before we shut it down? That's the thing about this show. We say we're going to do this, we say we're going to do that, and then we get to talking, and that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about.
No, we covered a lot of ground. We'll see where we stand with the cap and free agency when we get to that show. And it was a heck of a season, breaking it down for all you guys out there. And I hope you listen next season, and we'll continue to break down basketball and going forward until training camp next year. So it was a lot of fun this year. Kind of didn't end the way we wanted it to go, but it is what it is, and we move on.
There you go. Just as a reminder, like he just mentioned, really quick, like sometime next week, we're gonna get down a date and figure it out and get the show rolling. We talked about this at the end of games, or at the end of games. Well, kind of, but the end of podcast that we are going to, for those who care, we are going to have a Minnesota weekly basketball Gopher talk and Timberwolf talk. It'll be a weekly basis. We'll take it all the way to the end of the Timberwolf season. But don't forget that the Purple People Eaters podcast, we're going away. We're hibernating for a while. But come late February, we're going to have a pre-show on that free agency, post-show free agency, pre-show NFL, or NFL draft, post-NFL draft. And we're going to start earlier in the summer on a weekly basis, too. So the Purple People Eaters podcast is going nowhere. It's just hibernating. But it does kind of transition into Minnesota Basketball Weekly, okay? So just a reminder there. Enjoy the holiday season. Hopefully, when you're listening to this, it's probably going to be you're probably hung over right now if you think about when you're going to listen to it. So hopefully you had a good New Year. For those listening live, have a great New Year. Be safe. We are out, and we will see you next year. Peace.
Once you become the world champion, I believe that you